Yes, you
including the
said you
toilet
never
bowl
thought
cleaner?
about you are out there on the screen portraying these acts, portraying it as normal behavior. You're feeding into that mentality, that rape culture mentality that makes me a victim of it and every other woman sitting here. And so for you to say you are untouched by it, I resent that.
Who is responsible for pornography and its impact on women? I'm Pat Mitchell, and today on Woman to Woman, we'll ask that of women who make their living off pornography and women who've been victimized by it.
Woman to woman, face to face, coming together from many places, asking the questions one at a time, finding that the answers were there all the time. And I'm so glad I'm a woman. I'm so glad I can say, woman to woman, woman to woman, woman to woman, every day.
If you took a poll and people admitted to ever having seen an X-rated film, probably the one or two of those films that they would admit to ever having seen or at least heard about would be Deep Throat and The Devil and Miss Jones. Both actresses who were in those films are with us today. And on each side of the room are people who have either produced pornographic material or who actually picket pornographic material. We consider each woman here an expert in her own convictions. For those of us who know so very little about behind the scenes of that business, Shelley was, as an actress, known as Georgina and starred in the film The Devil and Miss Jones. How did you get involved in this film and in that business?
I was hired to run the commissary for the film. I have been doing production work on film a lot, and I'm an ex-gypsy dancer, what have you, and when I was in the office picking up the money to shop for the film, they had me read with someone who was reading for another part, and it was like a Judy Garland movie. They said, "Why don't you do this role?" And I'm an actress. I said, "The whole thing, this role, me?" You know, sure, I did it. And I had a wonderful time, and I certainly never dreamed that it would get national recognition. I thought, you know, that it was the kind of film that was shown in garages or at bachelor parties. I'd heard about them, but I'd never seen films of this nature. And I didn't really even think in terms of what will I do when my folks find out, you know, kind of thing. I just did it because it was a wonderful part, and I had a wonderful time doing it.
What did you do when your folks in Tyler, Texas found out?
My father took the stand that he didn't know. He chose to not know, which was fine. My mother, of course, confided in me earlier along the way that she had heard about it. My brother had seen some picture. I tried it first once it became a national monument or whatever you say, to keep a low profile, as we say, and stay out of the public eye as myself. I continued to make the films because I just can't resist it when someone says, "Would you like to do this part?" It's my vice. What can I say? I love it. So I...
You have no regrets about that film or any of the ones that have followed then?
The only regrets is that I'm not hired frequently enough to survive and make my living at it, which I never was. So I always continued with my production work in film. I mean, I don't know very much about film, but I know more about it than I do anything else in life, so that's what I do for a living.
It's interesting that you have not suffered any regrets or change of heart, and in fact continue in the business, because as Linda Lovelace Marchiano made public in her book, a lot of regrets. And not only regrets, but the story that actually you did not do it on your own free will.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say that I don't feel that I was an actress. I was a victim of the film Deep Throat. And as far as regretting it, I don't regret what happened to me because I was a survivor, and I probably wouldn't be alive today to speak my voice and my opinion, or actually my experience, that I was a victim, and that pornography is not a victimless crime. My regrets are the fact that people in our society just assume when a woman is involved in pornography or when a woman is raped, that it's 100% by will and by free choice. Mine wasn't by free choice. I had a gun pointed to my head, a 45 automatic. I've had an M16 semi-automatic machine gun put to me. A lot of people hesitate to believe what happened to me. But I think that, like the 52 survivors that we had, hostages in Iran, I think they could understand and relate to what I went through because they heard the click of that gun go off behind them. And they had to wonder when it was going to, you know, when the real bullet was going to be there.
You are insisting that you made the entire film under those kind of conditions, as well as the film's other films.
Right, that's correct. The whole 2.5 years that I was with Mr. Traynor, I was a victim, literally a victim. I was never allowed out of his presence. I wasn't able to speak my own thoughts and my own opinion. Once I was free from Mr. Traynor, I was able to regroup myself and get back in touch with my own personalities. And I think that's something not only the other people in our society, but the court system has to realize that when you're held prisoner for 2.5 years, you don't get free the next day and, oh, everything's hunky-dory the way it was before it all happened. That's not the way it is. It takes many, many years to regroup yourself and to get back in touch with life.
Especially since the film goes on.
Sure.
The reminder of that goes on.
I mean, I'm 10 years, over 10 years down the road now, and there are days when I'll be with my children and I'll think of something and I'll start to cry. But there's a greater distance between those times. And now I feel I have the opportunity to educate society about pornography. If they want to hear it and listen, you know, they can become educated what it's really like.
Marga, you produce pornographic films or X-rated films.
X-rated films, adult entertainment. is
Adult
what I would call it.
entertainment. Why and how did you get into this business? And is it possible that a story such as Linda's could happen in this business?
I can only speak for myself. As a producer, I would not be associated with violence, and to me, pornography is violence, the real violence, people getting killed in movies and people getting shot up and cut up. That's the real violence and the real pornography. As far as Linda's story is concerned, that's an individual thing that happened.
May I interrupt you? It's really not. It's not an individual thing. I did a program in Boston, and a psychiatrist was on the program. And the interviewer said, well, what about Linda's story? And he said the only difference between Linda's story and what goes on in our society today is the fact that she's alive to tell about it. He says most of the women are used by pornographers and pimps, and they're injected with heroin, so they have the tracks and the needle marks and all that, and they're tossed in an alleyway, and when the police find them, they just assume them as a prostitute.
Maybe that was the practice that was done, whatever happened to you. But nowadays, I mean, we've come a long way since then.
What about snuff pornography? I mean, those people were just arrested.
I'm thinking so much about that. Has anyone here ever seen a so-called snuff film?
I have seen photos taken from the film.
We don't have to explain what this is.
I don't doubt that. I'm just curious. I've never come close to anything. I mean, the minute I sniff anything weird going on, I just say, thank you, I'm not available, and leave. I never got involved, and nobody ever held a gun to my head to do anything.
Have you seen, I mean, I'm asking every one of you around here, have you seen films lately? I mean, have you, or do you know what the quality of the films are?
They have become more violent in the last 10 years. As has the amount of violence increased against women and children.
I really can't agree with you on that.
Men too.
But it has.
I mean, let's
well,
not. I'm a feminist, and I belong to now. I'm a card-carrying member. But the violence that is perpetrated in the world is against men too. So let's not leave.
So what does that mean? I mean, just because it's...
Oh, I mean that violence against women is not the only violence that exists in the world.
But we're talking about violence in society, and unfortunately, most of that is directed against women, children, and the defenseless.
And 89%.
Sure, they're easy marks. I grant you.
89% of violent crimes against women are committed by men also. And pornography is usually backed, produced, made by men. It's not a woman's industry usually. I mean, you're a real exception from the research that we've done at Wave Film.
I'm a past president of the Adult Film Association of America. And the adult film industry offers women more opportunities than the general release films. There are more women producers, directors, writers, editors, theater owners, distributors that are women. And I attended a seminar at UCLA entitled Women in Film. And I was absolutely astounded at the great number of highly qualified women who are unable to find work in the general release field.
And so they're working in adult entertainment.
Right.
But is that a good answer? I mean, is that a
like a
solution to the
subculture.
fact that they aren't working in general
She
release
just
films?
said that everyone in adult films are males, and that just isn't
She
true.
didn't say everyone.
Well, the majority is.
But does it
the
make a
majority.
difference that there are women there, Maria? Is it different because you direct and produce adult entertainment than a man did?
I think it is.
What is that difference?
The storylines are about women's sexual fantasies, not just men's. And today's adult film is really concerned with the woman's point of view as well as the man.
Well, I don't see too many women hanging around these places. Most of it's men who patronize it. It's men who really support it. It's men who will argue First Amendment rights. It's men who head up organizations and that type of thing to defend that in society. I don't see a lot of women out there.
I tell you what, we can't all talk at one time. We can only one talk at a time. So right now I'm going to throw to a break, and we come back, we'll all continue talking one at a time.
Add the flavor of tangy cheddar cheese to a thicker cut potato chip, and you get O'Grady's brand au gratin potato chips with a heartier cheese taste and a deeper cut that cradles lots of tangy cheddar flavor. So for the hearty taste of more cheese and more potato, taste O'Grady's au gratin. The more cheese, more potato chip.
Help keep your world looking slim and beautiful. Wear Slenderals.
I'm Jerome Schulman, inventor of Shane toothpaste. I'm sure there are many people never heard of Shane toothpaste, yet hundreds of thousands of people using Shane with remarkable results. We receive letters from people telling us Shane is terrific, it's fantastic, it's wonderful. I'd like to have you buy Shane if it isn't the finest toothpaste you've ever used, and if it doesn't do more for you than any other toothpaste, send back the empty tube with your receipt, and I will give you a full refund.
Available at these stores.
Scandinavian Health and Racket promises to be Pittsburgh's ultimate fitness complex. For a limited time only, you can save 58% on a charter membership, 58% off. You'll enjoy racquetball, aerobic dance, $500,000 worth of exercise equipment by Nautilus, Universal, York, and Life Cycle. Relax in the spacious whirlpool, sauna, and 25-meter lap pool. You'll find it all right here. 58% off won't last long, so call right now, 833-7200. Come to Scandinavian, where America comes for fitness.
The biggest argument that always arises about adult entertainment pornography is that, in fact, it does have a societal effect, and that effect is that it increases violence and leads to violent behavior. Lisa Lynn was a victim of violence within her own family, molested by a stepfather, and in your own mind feel that pornography was very much connected to this violence against you and against women in general.
I don't feel that I am a victim any longer. I'm a survivor. But in my case, in the early part of the molesting, this is really hard for me. Pornography was used I understand now, to loosen up and to make me uninhibited. So that if I saw that other women were doing this sort of thing, it would make it okay for me to do it also. This has been done. In fact, police reports, in most police reports, child molesters or offenders have had pornography either on them, in their cars, in their homes, or have used it at some part in the molestation. And I definitely feel that it incites violence. Pornography objectifies women, and that is the sole reason for rape in women, is that they're seen as objects. And why should a man care about raping an object? It's just an object to be raped.
I agree.
I'd like to articulate a bit to that, Pat. I testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on cable pornography, and Dr. Edward Donestein from the University of Wisconsin was there. And he did some astonishing research. He worked with college-age students, healthy, all-American type of football player lads that could be your brother or my son. And by exposing them to 1 hour of pornographic material per day on an escalating gross scale, by the time they became desensitized day after day, it became very addictive and it became progressive, so that they were constantly seeking the more bizarre behavior because old hat became old hat. And at the end of his studies, those young men who normally would never have thought in terms of rape and sexuality came to the point of desensitization where they were perfectly willing to accept rape as a perfectly normal sexual behavior.
I was raped by a man who was a pornographic material patron, and his statement to the police after he was captured, after knifing me and abusing me and brutalizing me, was that he couldn't understand the difference between, if he can pay for this type of entertainment and go and watch it, why can't he act it out in society? What was the difference? If when women say that I'm doing this on my own free will to make this movie, that may be true for them, but what happens is when men see this, they think that women are like that, and they think that every woman wants that or that they need that. And I resent the fact that people think that it doesn't happen. I resent the fact that people don't think that someone who, a male who goes and sees movies of fathers having intercourse with daughters, stepfathers with daughters, uncles, grandfathers, I've seen those movies. You cannot tell me that those people can go see that as normal behavior and don't somehow act it out in various ways in their own home situation.
Georgina in The Devil and Miss Jones, in some segments, said, hurt me, yes, hurt me, to give the image that women like to be hurt, which is a totally false image. And I was very interested in the first segment when she said that she would walk away from bizarre type behavior, because in The Devil and Miss Jones, there is a segment where she gratifies herself sexually, first of all using an apple and a bunch of grapes and then a banana, and then eventually a snake. And she rubs that snake in her private areas, and then she takes the head of that snake and puts it into her mouth in a simulation of oral copulation. Now, to me, that's bestiality, and I can't understand why the film wasn't confiscated and judged obscene on bestiality, which is sex with an animal or sex with a foreign object. That was pretty bizarre, Georgina.
Well, you see, the snake was not a mature snake, and it was a simulated sexual act.
And not a consenting adult.
No, it was a simulated sexual act. The snake was not indeed copulating in any way. The snake was just sort of sitting there saying, what are you doing? And I was sitting there saying, you know, go ahead, see if you can bite me. And I have handled snakes along with other animals. I have heard a lot of horror stories, and so I certainly cannot say that this doesn't exist. All I can say is I have been so totally untouched by it that I'm astounded whenever I hear these stories.
But you aren't untouched, because every other person who has that acted out on them is touched by you, because you are out there on the screen portraying these acts, portraying it as normal behavior. You're feeding into that mentality, that rape culture mentality that makes me a victim of it and every other woman sitting here. And so for you to say you are untouched by it, I resent that you say that. You have no right to say that you are untouched by it.
You're talking about isolated cases. Now,
how many isolated cases do we
need? Let me tell you something. Chapman was so moved by John Lennon that he went and shot him. And what about Hinckley, who was so infatuated by Jodie Foster that he shot President Reagan?
So Jodie Foster did the film Taxi Driver, where she was a child prostitute. And the whole idea, I mean, that's just a real proof.
My question that I wanted to get to was, should I feel worse than ladies who portray murderesses in films? As an actress, I have portrayed a lot of pretty dreadful people. But I played some nice people, too. Am I responsible for the impact of every film I've ever made,
yes,
including
you said
the
you
toilet
never
bowl
thought
cleaner
about what was going
society? Huh?
Your own statement was that I didn't even think about it. I just said, yes, it was a part to play. I
Yes,
didn't think you thought about what you're trying to do.
I have played roles as an actress in many
But
different
what
kinds
roles?
of films.
And what
now, well, I mean,
consequences do
should
those
every
roles
actress
have?
feel a social obligation to what impact that movie is going to have on society if she takes a part and plays it? I mean,
Absolutely.
what about
Let me ask
Miss
some-
Redgrave and her PO and all of that arguments?
Let me ask that question
Surely.
of a psychotherapist who happens to be among us, Barbara M. Roberts, who's the director of the Center for Social and Sensory Learning. And the people that you see who have come for sex therapy, are there these connections that we're hearing? And what about the question how responsible our material is to what you see acted out in society?
I think many people are responding just as these women are saying, but we need to differentiate between erotic and explicit. Explicit and erotic depictions are not necessarily pornography. And it depends upon the motivation of the person viewing the film. And I think that that may come first in many instances, because there are other root causes for rape and incest than pornography. Pornography may be the trigger. And certainly I don't approve of the use of pornography in that sense. But sometimes I send a married couple, I've sent the married couples to see Georgina's film and Linda's film, because they had become open enough to need that desensitization for them to have a healthy sexual relationship.
What about intimacy between people?
Well, I tell you, those are questions we should answer, and we'll be back after these messages and do that.
Trucks and more trucks right here. Northview AMC Jeep Renault. That's why. We're going to give you $1,000 for any trade, no matter how you get it here. How about this unit? Brand new. 1984 Jeep J10 pickup. You bring me a $1,000 trade, you pay me $9,988. How about this unit? Brand new. 1984 Cherokee. After the guaranteed trade-in, you pay me $10,788. So what do? Let's pick up the phone. Let's give us a call. We'll see you here.
Come on, boy. Come on.
Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
The motto of any successful business is satisfy the people you serve. That's the way we work. If you've been hurt in an accident, you want someone capable of protecting your interests. We know the law. We're in business to help you.
Call the law office of DeMay, Donnelly, and Homiak. Cases involving auto accidents, wrongful death, medical malpractice, and serious personal injury handled on a percentage basis. No charge for initial consultation. Call DeMay, Donnelly, and Homiak at 833-2900.
They're in your corner.
More and more doctors need your help. Help to fill patient care and administrative areas of the medical practice. The Sawyer School now offers a course that can put you on the job quickly, working as an important part of the medical team. You'll learn laboratory analysis, electrocardiogram operation, and other skills vital to today's medical office or hospital.
For a free brochure about a career as a medical assistant, call the Sawyer School at 261-5700. Call now.
We should make it clear that when we're talking about pornographic materials or sexually explicit materials, that we're not only talking about films. We're talking about books and magazines, and as we'll probably talk about later, even advertising and billboards and other kinds of things that pervade our society. I mean, for example, to hear the horror of Lisa Lynn's incest story, and then to realize that a series of books called The Family Album are being sold in bookstores, and the titles are She Molested Her Son, Family Orgy, Daddy's Hard Pole, Seducing Mom, and Incestual Delights. It's hard to imagine that reading that material serves any good purpose, that's for sure. And yet I know that those of you who are involved in the production of adult entertainment films, how do you think about the themes of the films, the material, the sex acts that are involved in the films, and the way in which women are portrayed in those and the way in which an audience perceives them? Marga, is that part of what you...
Yes, that's definitely the direction that I am going in, to give women an equal chance to express themselves sexually. And I choose the stories, I choose the scripts, and I hire the actors and actresses, and it's done on a professional level.
When Margot says she hires these girls or these men and pays them to perform these acts, that is a form of prostitution. Prostitution is in violation of the law, and for the life of me, I can't understand how you can get away with that form of prostitution and not be prosecuted under our laws across the nation.
You have a question? I mean, an answer?
Yes, I do. I really cannot agree with anything that you're saying. First of all, we're all in the entertainment industry. We're producing movies. People want to see these movies, and this is what we're doing.
Copulating together
It's
under
part,
the sexual
it's part
act
of the script. It's part of the script. And, I mean, what's so wrong with it?
There have been cases that have been successfully prosecuted under state prostitution laws. And I think we need to firm that up. The second point that we have to make is that a large percentage of our pornographic films is funded and is one of the major products of organized crime. I have a chart prepared by Homer Young, who is now retired from the FBI, and he lists the Bonanno family, all the different families that make the news media every day. The very film that Linda starred in, Deep Throat, Gerard Damiano had very close ties to organized crime. The Pirano brothers, that film of Deep Throat, for example, has been judged obscene by every state that it was heard in. Right now, a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court upheld the conviction of that film of Deep Throat. And here we are in a case of every city that licenses... I didn't interrupt you, Margot. Please try and be a lady and not interrupt me. Now, I believe that every porno film that is made and exhibited in communities across the nation, especially if there is organized crime money behind it, the city is literally licensing one of the major products of organized crime.
Margot, would you like to answer?
I really can't agree with anything that he's saying as far as organized crime is concerned. I mean, Maria can tell you as well as I can tell you, we're all tax-paying citizens who are in the business of producing films and producing films that people want to see, and it's not hurting anyone.
Maria?
Yes, I'm totally surprised that she said that Deep Throat was judged obscene in every city. That certainly isn't the truth. Where do you get your statistics? It was not judged obscene in Los Angeles, in Seattle. I played it in my theaters. I'm a theater owner, and I've played that film, and I was never prosecuted on it.
Do you realize that every time you show the film Deep Throat in your theater or whatever, that you are showing me being raped?
No, I don't realize that.
No, not only are you, there's not many women, I'm pretty sure, from what we've seen when we pick at films, that attend these shows. And the whole point of Linda Lovelace in this show was that the sex act was taking place in her throat, which is obviously not where women are stimulated.
Obviously, this was also 10 or many more years ago. And again, I must stress the point.
I have this month's Hustler magazine, and it has I mean, I really feel bad that I had to even pay for the thing, but since I needed to use it, I had to pay for it. It glorifies rapists, child molesters, all the way through it. I mean, Chester the Molester is a monthly character in Hustler magazine, and he is glorified.
Well,
I mean,
that's
whole
one
idea of
complication.
that
I mean,
type
you
of
can't just
pornography
label
is to be
everything
a
the same.
satire, which is not happening there, because satire is to ridicule the...
But you brought up magazines. Why don't we, when we come back after this, talk about, I mean, moving into advertising and the so-called more popular media, and where we may be borrowing some of the same trouble that we've talked about before. We'll be back.
For seagoing romance and laughter, board the Love Boat at 4. And don't forget Pittsburgh, your taxi arrives at 5. Afternoons are great fun on WPXI.
You keep asking questions about Slim Wrap.